Hi guys, and thanks for joining me on another episode of Design and Half. In today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about design and code, as well as designers and coders per se as a sort of team, how they work, what the dynamic is like, and especially what you could do as a designer or as a developer to improve communication within your own team and make it more efficient, if you will. Okay, then let's get started with it. In terms of discussions around the web, there have been for a good amount of time discussions around the fact that designers should code, or should they actually stick to their guns and just do design only. And has always been sort of like this huge debate over designers being able to code, if it's okay or not. To be honest, from my personal perspective, I think being able to code, or at least trying to do some basic coding and having some understanding of how code logic works is super beneficial for any designer, whatever the seniority level may be, just because it makes it far easier to understand why a specific solution that you proposed as a designer can just not be implemented exactly as you wanted. And additionally to this, there's another hidden benefit, sort of, that nobody actually talks about, and that hidden benefit is the fact that you'll be able to tell whenever a developer tries to sort of bullshit you into accepting a solution that he feels is better for him, just because he doesn't want to work more than you do. And to this extent, I think the main takeaway here is that designers and developers should really work together, in the sense that they should come to a common understanding that both of them respect each other, and both of them respect each other's time, most importantly, which means that me as a designer don't want you as a developer to work extra just to implement my stuff, but at the same time, I as a designer don't want to work extra just because you don't feel like putting some extra time on your project, or on your end, not on your project, on your end. I genuinely think that a lot of the friction derives from these two main points, especially because there's this tug of war between designer and developer about who is going to end up being the one who draws the shorter stick. And to be honest, I think none of them actually have to do that. I think it all boils down to how you guys manage to respect each other, to communicate that you can't, if you do this as a designer, it would mean a lot of work for you, and if you do this as a developer, it would mean a lot of work for you. Obviously, there are no perfect solutions, and in some situations, I think the best solution to get over these types of problems is to actually get to a compromise, to a common understanding that, okay, this time I'll take one for the team as a designer or as a developer, and next time it's going to be you who's going to sort of have my back. And this sort of overlapping of trading favors, if you will, has always worked wonders for me whenever I was working with developers and I needed their help into implementing something from the design perspective. But at the same time, whenever they tried to implement something and I felt like the solution was suboptimal from a code perspective, I was able to offer a bit of insight on an alternative solution, just because here's the main key point that I want you guys as designers to take out of this. For example, you have a special feat that allows you to tap into your imagination to be able to come up with a out of the box solution that a developer might not be able to see immediately. Why? Well, think about the fact that you guys are always trying to work that creative muscle. find a new way of solving the same old problem, which is basically whatever designer does. Like 90% of the time, we try to find alternate solutions for existing problems, just because most of the problems in today's lives have been sort of solved. So what ends up happening is that both we as designers as well as you guys as developers are sort of pitched against each other to find the best solution that has been already been found. So that means that we have to find the next best solution or an alternative one. So we as designers have this special feat that allows us to tap into our imagination and being able to think outside the box, at least for a couple of seconds, to see if we can't find something which works better. And I think that specific skill is very useful if you combine it with the ability to write code. And not so much from a perspective of actually writing the most perfect code, because that will never happen. Trust me, guys, it's not going to happen, neither for developers nor designers. There's always going to be bugs, there's always going to be stuff to be fixed. It's like, don't even think about it. The point I'm trying to make is that if you know code, you sort of know the dimensions of the cage that you're working with. Just think about this as a lion working inside the cage analogy, and the lion is trying to get out. As long as you know the size of the cage, what it's constructed of, and how tough it is, you can actually find ways to break out of the cage if you use your skill and your imagination. And this is why I'm trying to make this point about you guys as designers, to learn a little bit of code, or at least not necessarily code per se, but at least have the fundamentals of object-oriented development, because it sort of helps you have a more structured thinking pattern, think with a lot more constraints, if you will. Because the one thing that I've learned throughout my career, ever since I've started design, and especially ever since I've stepped into doing a little bit of development projects myself, was that I noticed how hard it is for developers to actually find a good solution, because oftentimes there's so much working against you. There's the time. There's other people who are doing your code review, especially if you're a mid or a junior designer. There's stress coming from that side. Aside from that, there's always the limitations of technology which is being chosen, and this is sort of a contention point that's always going on between architects or system architects and engineers / developers, just because usually it's the engineer, the architects who are making the technology choice, and not so much the developers. Well, to be honest though, here it actually depends on each company and their specifics, but usually it's not the developers who decide whatever framework and architecture gets implemented and what technology stack gets used. That being said, I do want to point out the fact that in most cases, developers have to deal with a lot of bugs in a very short time span, and that in particular is very, very stressful, especially if you're dealing with bugs which are not necessarily so how could I put this, so forthcoming and so obvious. They are more likely due to platform issues in combination with the tech stack that you're using that creates some sort of incompatibility. And I'm sure developers know exactly what I'm talking about, because that's one of the biggest reasons for frustration whenever you're creating a new project. Case in point being, for example, CocoaPods, which is, as far as I know, a huge problem for a lot of people who are starting out to do iOS development, and especially those who have to take up iOS development on older projects which have a lot of legacy code that still relies sort of on CocoaPods, and especially on C++ or Objective-C legacy code that hasn't been ported to Swift, or is not able to be ported to Swift. Another thing that could probably help you as designers to better interact with developers is try to understand that they are people too. They are not godlike, they are not robots, they are people like us, and they have families, they have a need for free time as well, even though if they're passionate about whatever they are doing, and you see them as sort of like these geeks, they are people like us, and they are really cool people, to be honest. They know a lot of stuff about a lot of things, and they deserve absolutely every bit of respect for being the foundation that sort of built the 21st century in a lot of ways, if you want to. That being said, I think in equal parts, designers deserve the same amount of respect that developers do in absolutely every project. And I think this mentality of design being secondhand, or associating the concept of design with visual art is something which is fundamentally broken, because design is just sort of a branch off the visual side of things. It's not necessarily only the visual side of things, and it actually depends on what type of design we're talking about. But we already mentioned this topic when I spoke last episode about the difference between several types of designers. So I guess that should sort of have cleared that point up by now. If not, I'll just link up the last episode in the description of this one, and you can check it out if you want to, if you're a developer and you need some help with that part. Okay, that being said, I think that in a lot of ways this sort of war that has always existed between designers and developers, and I'm saying war with air quotes just because it's not really a war. It's basically a huge misunderstanding that has been evolving into mistrust in some situations, and into this meme thing that goes around the web for quite some time about designers being around in their world and developers in there. It's actually not true, to be honest. There's a lot of people in UX design that have transitioned over from development just because for some of them it felt like the easier thing to do, just because they had some basic knowledge of design, having done front-end work, and UX just came sort of naturally to them, and they transitioned into this role per se. By the way, Paul, if you're hearing this, ciao. Salutes, wherever you are. You know you know who you are and where you are right now. All the best to you, by the way. And that's what I wanted to mention. Like, we don't have to be these perfect boxes to be able to interact with each other. So, me as a base, I'm a person that actually finished languages, foreign languages, then went off to do 1 year of economics, flunked that year, and then I went to do actual design just because I didn't feel comfortable with doing economics. So my background is not necessarily 100% purebred designer, or I don't have any art bone in my body, if you will. And I think from that point of view, we shouldn't necessarily judge people just based on their backgrounds. We should just take them at face value, if you will. Obviously, your choices and your career paths have some sort of influence over your experience and whatever you are doing, which is absolutely clear. But that doesn't mean that we should necessarily judge people or people's qualities at work based on that alone. I mean, there's work always, and you can judge people by what they do, not necessarily by what they have done or who they are. In that respect, I think it's always better to actually see I don't know, firsthand whatever a person is doing. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you're trying to hire a UI designer, just talk to him, see whatever he says, see if he's passionate about whatever he's doing, see if he knows his stuff, having worked on other projects, see what type of project that was, and try to gauge him from that perspective, rather than looking at his UI portfolio and saying, oh, this is amazing, just because it's some optimized version of whatever he was doing before, and he put it into his portfolio thinking this is going to impress someone. I think we should probably stop at some point trying to impress each other with all sorts of cocky things, and just think about what exactly it is that needs to be done, and be more practical about it, rather than so theoretical in a way. Okay, that being sort of a tangent, I went off. I just want to come back to the topic at hand, which is designers and developers, and reinforcing about on what I just said earlier. I want to point out that the best types of collaboration between designers and developers come from mutual respect. That this is the absolute baseline, I think, that comes in all communications with all types of people in all areas of life. It's just one of those basic things that, when you think about it, needs to happen whenever two people or more people communicate with each other. There should be this understanding that right now it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about the problem that both of us need to be solving. It shouldn't be about I'm better than you, it shouldn't be about I am more right than you for this job. It should be about, let's fix this problem together. If I have something which is valuable to you in terms of a potential solution, let's see if we can both discuss it. Let's see if we can find a good way to solve this. If something seems off for a developer, and you as a developer, please don't tell someone he's stupid, he's idiotic for asking that question. We sometimes as designers don't necessarily understand the whole thing 100%, but if we're asking questions, it's because we just want to understand the problem you're having, because we're trying to help you. At the same time, you as designers don't come off from a very high horse and treat developers like if they wouldn't understand whatever you guys are trying to explain to them. They're quite smart, and some of them even know a little bit about design. I've worked with a lot of people who knew about design. So they weren't experts about it, obviously, because they weren't focused on that. They were just developers, but they knew quite enough to be able to tell if something felt off or not. And I was always, I don't know, confident enough to ask their opinion about it, even though asking for an opinion doesn't necessarily mean that after that you actually have to implement whatever that opinion was. I mean, one thing I think a lot of people confuse whenever there's discussions is the fact that whenever someone asks an opinion, it's not sort of set in stone that the other people who are asking for that opinion need to also necessarily make it happen or make it true. It's just I'm trying to ping pong ideas with someone, and if someone gives me a good idea that I want to jot down, fine, but I'm not making any promises that thing gets implemented exactly like it came out. The same can be said from a designer's perspective or a developer's perspective. So if me as a designer come out and say, oh, dude, I have this and this and this idea about how to fix your problem, or how to move forward with our problem in this case, what do you think? And he said, like, okay, I think it's a good idea, but I'm not sure if we can implement it right now. That's just fine. I mean, from my perspective, that's a win. Why? Because I offered you a solution. I tried to help you fix your problem. You understood that I'm trying to fix your problem, and you didn't come out strong to me and were okay with that, with me trying to be helpful. and right that moment we try to sort of build a bridge to build upon it and communicate better in the future. That's what you guys should be aiming for in terms of how to communicate inside the developer or with developers. And again, like I said earlier, try to leave egos outside of these discussions. Just try to focus on the problem, not necessarily on who's there. Or whenever you are, or you feel like the discussion is heading towards that area, either as a developer or as a designer, try and take a breather, or at least take a break, even if it's 2-3 minutes. Go to the toilet, think about it, and just don't start attacking each other. That's the main thing here, and the main goal is to not attack each other for the proposed solutions. Nothing stupid, nothing is idiotic. If something is not okay in terms of a solution, please explain it. The point here is to communicate and find whatever works the best. And that means even if you have to discuss more than one solution, do it. Like, find the best solution that you guys need to find. Try to help each other out, not strip each other down or tear each other up. Don't do it. Just like work together and find the best solution together, not separately, because that's why you are working on the same project. You're trying to solve the same problem together, and the key word here being together, not separately. And this is one thing that I've noticed happening in a lot of companies. Most of the companies that I've worked with were really good at trying to communicate vision and strategy and sort of future portfolio goals for the company, which meant that we as employees would also benefit from that, in the sense that we were primed to know whatever we should be doing further down the road. We were primed to know whatever obstacles we were going to face in terms of, I don't know, building a new product, coming up with a new strategy, coming up with a new, I don't know, feature, for example, and what challenges that could bring. And the exciting part was never, I don't know, finding the perfect solution, but finding a good solution that sort of made everyone at least content, if not happy, and that would also deliver a high amount of quality that would not besmirch us as a team and would not besmirch the company itself. I think this is one of the biggest reasons why most teams fail, is because the goals they have are not aligned with the company's goals, and vice versa. The company goals usually are not communicated by everyone, and this is just one of those situations where if people are just not aligned with the vision and don't know about stuff, things are going down in chaos. Just because some person heard something from someone, they're just spreading some rumors, and that rumor might not necessarily be true, and then you have to stop that rumor, and so on and so forth. It's not really healthy, to be honest. I think it's much more practical to communicate strategy and intention beforehand, and showing people periodically at least what the company is actually doing, both financially, both strategically speaking, and both in terms of what they see as a vision for the future. I think those things are really, really important for all the teams that are working inside that company. Having said that, I think one of the biggest positive changes inside any type of team that has mixed designers and developers in itself is trust. I think trust is one of the key ingredients into building a good team that meshes well together, and the more you trust the developer you are working with as a designer, or you trust the designer you are working with as a developer, the more you guys are going to get better results. And trust is really powerful, because as as someone quite recently said, it's easier to give trust and take it away when someone fails you, rather than just have people earn your trust. Because in some form, who are you as a person to make other people have to earn your trust? We're not important, even though we're important at the same time. I'm not sure if that sort of makes sense, because it's one paradoxical situation, but it's true if you think about it. We matter for ourselves, but we don't matter in a universal term, or even in a team scenario. And I think what matters in a team scenario is that everybody gets the same amount of attention, that everybody earns the same amount of respect and honesty from each other, so that they can work together on whatever they have to be doing. And in a lot of ways, I've seen this happen in two of the teams that I've worked with. The current one that I'm working with, I see a lot of honesty going around and a lot of trust being exchanged on a very, very frequent basis, and I think it's really amazing. And the last one was the one I've worked in previously when I was still working at Frontier Silicon, 2016, I believe. And that's where a lot of the main thing that happened when I got hired there was that people told me up front during the interview that they trust me. They trust me for to do a good job, and they actually not even tested me or given me a design challenge when I got hired. I just did 3 interviews. I did one interview with the hiring managers to see who I was, what my objectives are, and so on and so forth. The second one didn't actually happen, or actually was sort of a smaller interview with one of the managers, I think, around my design skills, but it was more theoretical and talking about my past experiences and so on. And the last one was with the team. And this last interview with the team was always for Frontier Silicon the make or break whenever they hired someone. And that, I think, looking back, was the whole genius of the idea. Why? Well, it's simple, because if you're going to work together with other people, you need to be able to tell if those people are going to work well with each other. And during that sort of lunch, what happened was that we just got together and people started asking you questions, who you are, what your passions are, and just like getting friendly with each other, not necessarily to probe you and prod you, but to actually find out who and what type of person you are. And if they could work with you and see how you react to questions, if you're jovial, if you're the type of introvert, if what I mean trying to understand you as a person. And I look back at those times, and I remember them fondly, because those were some of the most awesome times I've had in my career. In terms of hiring experience, they were the best, to be honest. I've never had such an amazing hiring experience as I had with Frontier Silicon back when I joined them. I think it was 2013. Yeah. I remember most all of the details, so it was quite a memorable experience, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I highly recommend, if you are able to include team-based interviews into your process of recruitment for designers or developers, or actually all types of people. They would work wonders for you, for your organization, for your team, and it would make sure that the team works well together, and it's not going to destroy itself and tear itself apart due to infighting. And this is another topic that I will probably have to address further down the road, regarding infighting, and especially regarding proper trainings that that add a lot of value to your organization in terms of communication and team meshing, if you will. Having said that, I would like to thank you so much for listening to the whole episode. If you reached this far, I'm really proud of you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for all of you who are actively listening into my podcast and bringing up those views, if you will. I enjoyed the audience and I enjoyed talking to all of you. Please subscribe if you haven't done so, if you feel like you get some value out of this podcast, and maybe share it with your friends, add it to your LinkedIn page, share it with some Facebook friends, whatever you guys like, or if you obviously if you feel like it. And please comment if you want to talk to me, or if you'd like me to do some special Q&A. I would be more than happy to do that, or an AMA. I'd be more than happy to host a live session if you guys want to do that. So please let me know in the comments section, and I hope you have an amazing evening. I hope you have an amazing rest of the week. I hope you stay safe and healthy, and we'll hear each other in the next episode. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.